Hey guys, I'm Dimension Jumper, and today I'll be ranking the 3D Zelda games from my least favourite to my favourite. And yeah, this video is just, and with when this video is going to be released, we're just a few days away from Tears of the Kingdom coming out, so I thought, why not uh, look back at some of the, well, basically just rank the 3D Zeldas from my least favourite to my favourite, and and with this list is it's just going to be my personal opinion. I'm not going to say like, oh, this game is at the bottom because it's bad, or this game's at the top because it's awesome, or it's my favorite, or whatever. Um, it's just going to be me talking about just talking about the 3D Zelda games that have been released over the last however many years that 3D Zelda games have been released, and just talking about my opinions on why some of the games on some of their on certain parts of the list. So for number six, which being the worst, and number one being the best. So for number six, for being my least favorite, is The Wind Waker. Now, The Wind Waker itself isn't a bad story. I do enjoy the story, and I do enjoy the whole seafaring pirate ocean theme. That's really enjoyable. Some of it, but overall, I would say that there are some things that do bring it down a bit. For instance, the whole Triforce quest. I know that people have talked about it in depth and in detail. That can get quite annoying, because because like I played the HD version, and yes, of course there are huge improvements to it, like the amount of charts that you get. I think it's been reduced a bit, and yeah, that is it is fun to collect the Triforce shards, but there are some other elements besides that I don't feel like it's just because like if because I do because like there are some bits like I do enjoy, but I feel like some elements are there just for the sake of just being there. For instance, there's these two islands that are really enjoyable because they are both a fire island and an ice island, and in order to collect the items from both, I think it's both I think it's the iron boots for the snowy area, or the ice the island, and I think it's the power bracelets for the fire island. They're both enjoyable. It's just they kind of feel like mini dungeons in a sort of sense, and that's all enjoyable. But I feel like there could have been a whole dungeon revolving around those two aspects, but I feel like Nintendo um, ran out of time and just thought, okay, let's just make these mini dungeons and just call it a day. And if they were dungeons, that would have been so cool to have a fire element and a night element. And yes, we kind of did have a fire element with with the very first dungeon that had fire elements, but maybe it could be something more based on like the because like with that island you have to use the ice arrows, and maybe something revolving around that could have been cool. So yeah, for number five is Majora's Mask. Now Majora's Mask has, unlike again like with the Wind Waker, has a lot of really cool elements. It's, to me personally, not my favorite. I feel like there's been a lot of things that I feel like that are rushed in this game, because this game didn't really have a lot of development time. I think it had about a year or so. Don't quote me on that. In terms of its development time, and yeah, and I do enjoy a lot of the elements. Like I do enjoy the masks, and the dungeons. I feel like they work really well with the whole 3D element. With that being, you have to, if you want to try and collect every mask, you have to collect the other masks, and then you can get the 3D mask. The dungeons themselves, I do think they work really well with the transformation masks to their advantage, because each of the transformation masks let you use their abilities on the dungeons. For instance, with the second dungeon in the game, you can use the Goron mask to smash or destroy certain part of the pillar that's in the middle that's in the middle of the main room, I think, or the central room of the dungeon. And with the Deku mask, you can just fly about different areas to get to different locations, and those are really cool aspects. It's just I feel like the whole 3-day concept is an interesting idea. I feel like it's overused in the game, in my opinion, in a sense that it could have been. It's okay, but I feel like it was just rushed. It feels rushed, and maybe it's kind of hard to explain. I would just say Majora's Mask as a whole is enjoyable, but I feel like some parts of the game were rushed. That's all I've got to say. For number 4 is Ocarina of Time. Now, I do think Ocarina of Time is an enjoyable game. I think out of the two Nintendo 64 games, it's the better one when you compare it to Majora's Mask, because with Ocarina of Time, it was the first 3D Zelda game, and I think it handled a lot of its things well, and a lot of the elements in the game really well. For instance, the whole time travel thing, because I feel like Majora's Mask tried to copy Ocarina of Time a bit too much in the sense that it uses time travel, and with Ocarina of Time, I think it does it really well. It kind of balances it well because you can collect stuff in the past and then you can take to the future. For instance, the Lens of Truth, you can collect it in the past, but then you can use it in the future. For instance, like in one of the dungeons, I think it's the Shadow Temple, I believe you can use the Lens of Truth, and that's really interesting because you can use, various items within the two different time periods. As I said before, not only can you use the Lens of Truth in the Shadow Temple in the future, but you can also use it in the past with the treasure mini game where you have to try and get that piece of art, and where it's like 50-50 with the chests. And you can use the Lens of Truth to basically cheat in a sense, and basically just get an easy win to the heart piece. So it's really cool to see how time travel is used and how you can use all these different items and the story. Different items to your advantage. And I do really like that. I really like the story. I think it's really interesting to see like how you can see the different moments of time affect the world of Hyrule. Like with when you're just a kid, it's all peaceful and just this beautiful landscape. But then when you go into the future, you see Hyrule as this destroyed landscape, and just everything is destroyed and everything is just decaying, and you're the only one that can actually repair it and defeat Gandalf once and for all. For number 3 is Breath of the Wild. Now, with Breath of the Wild, I do enjoy the whole open world concept. It's a real change for the Breath of the Wild. No, but not Breath of the Wild. For the Legend of Zelda concept of how we see open worlds, because we have had open worlds before in the past with Skyrim, any of the Fallout games, and various other games that we've seen in the past. Even the Wind Waker had its own open world to an extent, because with that game, even though it was open world, it was still slightly linear in the sense that you would just went from one location to the next to collect several items or maybe to defeat a boss. But with Breath of the Wild, the whole open world is really enjoyable because I do enjoy going from one location to the next and without having to do the main story, because the main story is still there. You can still do it on your own time, but I do like the whole thing of you can just go anywhere you want and just help the people of Hyrule with any of the tasks that they might give you, or doing any of the shrines, or collecting all of the 900 Korok seeds if you so want. And that, I think that what makes Breath of the Wild work, because this feels like a huge world that you can interact with and just talk to the people. And this world does, and with the story that we've been given, it feels like a sort of apocalyptic world where the other worlds, or the other worlds we've seen, they do have some apocalyptic, there's a sort of apocalyptic feeling to it, but it's not to this extent. The Wind Waker, again, to draw some similarities, it does have something like that with the whole ocean flooding Hyrule, and that does again brings back that apocalyptic feeling. But with Breath of the Wild, it feels much more of a threat because the actual threat, Calamity Ganon, it will always be in eye shot or will always be visible at some point to you, making that threat much more huge and larger to you in the game. For number 2 is Twilight Princess. Now, with Twilight Princess, I do really enjoy a lot of the things that this game offers, whether that's Wolf Link, Minna as a companion, Zan, who's an actually interesting villain, and everything else that you can do in the game. And I do really enjoy Twilight Princess, but mainly because I just enjoy it. It feels like a really fun game, and yes, people say it's edgy because it was released in like the the late noughties, early 2010s. It was roughly around that time period. But I enjoy it. I do like how, again, it's like this feels like you can interact with a lot of people and just see how each person reacts to different things. For instance, when you're in the second Twilight area, when you go to see, well, when you're in Kakariko Village, and you can see the some of the villagers there just cowering in fear because of some of the monsters. That is really interesting. And then once the Twilight has been dispelled, you can meet them again, and then they become more brave and start to defend the village for themselves. And that's really interesting. And that feels like really good character growth, just because because some of the villagers are from your hometown, Aldon Village, I believe, and they kind of look up to you like an older brother. So that's really ingenious. That's like, I think, really genius on Nintendo's side. Just so like, we've got these characters who act shy at first, but over the course of the game they become more courageous. And I do enjoy a lot of the dungeons in this game. You've got the Temple of Time, which is probably one of my favourites, I would say, because even though there are some interesting elements, I do enjoy the whole thing of it's like in Ocarina of Time, where it's like it balances the whole time travel thing, where in Twilight Princess you go there for the first time to collect the Master Sword, and then when you come back you go into the dungeon itself to collect a mirror shard. And yeah, I do really enjoy the game, and I do really enjoy all the character interactions. I think that what makes it really fun for me, just people just seeing it, just you interacting with the world around you, and just it's really fun. It's just so fun for me. And for number 1 is Skyward Sword. Now, Skyward Sword will always be my personal favourite 3D Zelda game, and personal favourite Zelda game of all time, mainly because it is the game that helped cement my love for the series. And I just really love a lot of the things that this game has. For instance, I do really enjoy Theater Companion to some points, because she is a really interesting companion when you think about the Zelda series as a whole, because yes, there are people who find her annoying, and yes, there are probably some times where she does interrupt a couple of times to slow the game down, but in the terms of the Zelda series as a whole, she has always been in the Zelda games, or all the Zelda games that have had their Master Sword. And that's really interesting, because you don't really see a companion return in big quotation marks, multiple times in Zelda games, because with someone like Minda, she went back to the Twilight Realm because she knew that both the living world and the Twilight world couldn't really interact with each other. With with Navi, she kind of just went and never really explained. She just left Link after the end of Ocarina of Time. But with Fi, I do really enjoy how she will always be with a version of Link in any game that has the Master Sword, whether that's in Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, even Breath of the Wild has the Master Sword. And I do really enjoy how in Breath of the Wild there was a reference to Fi in the secret memory and the used on the final trial in the Trial of the Sword, and you can hear that very well known shimmering whenever she leaves the Master Sword to talk to Link. That's really, really cool, and if she does come back into the kingdom, that will be really interesting. And for the dungeons and some of the characters themselves, I do enjoy the dungeons, well, some of them, because because one of them being is the ancient cistern, because you can just go from like this heavenly up top side to this sort of like hellish underground below, and that's really interesting. I wish more dungeons were like this, where you have like one dungeon but two halves to some extent, where they both influence each other, because the main tower building in the center, you can bring it down or up depending on which part of the dungeon you are. And I do really like the characters. Like with Grease, I do like his character arc. I think he has a really cool one. Again, like some of the characters from Majora's Mask. No, not Majora's Mask. Twilight Princess, and how they have some of them have character arcs and character growths. Grease has the same, where he starts off as the sort of neighborhood bully, and then becomes more of a respecting, genuine guy who respects Link now, instead of just bullying him every day. So that's a really cool, interesting character arc. And Girahim, he's cool. He's Girahim. He's just having a fun time. So yeah, I think there's a really lot of elements that I love about Skyward Sword that I probably won't be able to put into this video, but I might make a general discussion about it in the future. So yeah, that's been my ranking video of the 3D Zelda games. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.